two siblings were quietly sitting in first class, excited about their flight, when suddenly a flight attendant approached them angrily, demanding they leave their seats immediately. Humiliated in front of everyone, they were forced to move. But what the flight attendant didn't know was that their father owned the entire airline, and soon she'd regret ever judging them. Before we start the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe. Two young siblings quietly took their seats in the comfortable, spacious first-class cabin of the airplane. Mia, a thoughtful 16-year-old, gently placed her small backpack beneath the seat in front of her, and helped her younger brother Elijah, who had just turned 14, buckle his seatbelt properly. They felt proud and excited. Their father had gifted them these special first-class tickets for doing exceptionally well at school. The seats were large and soft, a completely new experience compared to their previous trips in economy class. Elijah eagerly looked through the window, watching other planes taxi slowly across the runway, his eyes shining with excitement. Mia smiled softly, feeling a mix of pride and responsibility since this was their first flight alone without their parents. She settled back, opened a magazine, and began flipping through its pages quietly. As passengers continued boarding the plane, a senior flight attendant named Karen walked down the aisle, confidently checking tickets and greeting passengers politely. She had worked for the airline for many years, and people respected her authority. Her uniform was sharp, her posture strict, and she carried herself as though she were fully in charge of everything around her. When Karen's eyes fell upon Mia and Elijah, her pleasant expression quickly faded, replaced by a confused frown. She glanced briefly around the cabin as though expecting someone else to be seated there, then approached the siblings with an air of suspicion. Karen stood beside Mia's seat, cleared her throat loudly, and spoke in a voice loud enough for the nearby passengers to hear. "Excuse me, are you two sure you're sitting in the right seats?" she asked sharply. Mia looked up quickly, surprised at the question, and politely handed over both boarding passes. "Yes, ma'am. Seats 1A and 1B, Mia replied softly. Karen inspected the tickets, her eyes narrowing slightly. She paused and handed the tickets back roughly. "These seats are for first-class passengers. Are your parents flying with you?" she asked, her tone suggesting disbelief. Mia shook her head gently, trying to stay calm. "No, we're traveling alone today," she answered quietly. Karen stood straighter, placing her hands firmly on her hips, looking down at them with clear doubt. "I'm afraid there might be some confusion. First-class seats are very expensive and reserved for specific passengers. Let me double-check this," she said loudly, making sure the other passengers could hear clearly. Mia felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment, aware that everyone around was now staring at them. Elijah shifted uncomfortably in his seat, confused and nervous about what was happening. Mia gently touched his hand, silently assuring him everything was fine, even though she herself was unsure. Karen quickly turned and walked toward the front of the plane, her steps sharp and confident, leaving Mia and Elijah sitting anxiously, feeling exposed under the gaze of other passengers. Mia looked down at her hands, breathing slowly to calm herself, not realizing yet how much worse things were about to become. Karen returned quickly, her expression now stern and cold. She stopped again beside Mia and Elijah, this time speaking louder and with greater authority. "Listen, there's clearly been some mistake. These seats belong to our first-class passengers, and you two need to move immediately to the economy cabin," she said firmly, drawing even more attention from passengers nearby. Mia's heart sank, and Elijah glanced around nervously, his excitement replaced by embarrassment. Mia gathered her courage and politely showed the tickets again. "But ma'am, we have first-class tickets. Our father booked these seats for us," she explained quietly, her voice shaking slightly with confusion. Karen barely glanced at the tickets this time, shaking her head dismissively. "Tickets can get mixed up, especially with minors flying alone. Maybe your father misunderstood something. Economy is in the back and you're delaying the boarding process," she snapped impatiently. Passengers began whispering among themselves, some turning away uncomfortably, others watching curiously, waiting to see how things would unfold. Mia felt a hot wave of humiliation wash over her, but she tried hard to remain composed. She did not want to create a scene or upset Elijah further. Slowly and silently, Mia stood up, signaling Elijah to follow her. The siblings quietly picked up their backpacks, feeling dozens of eyes follow every step they took. Karen stood to the side, not offering any help, her expression clearly satisfied that she had resolved the issue. Mia and Elijah walked down the narrow aisle toward the back, their faces flushed with embarrassment. Mia fought back tears, determined not to let anyone see her cry. As they finally found 2 empty seats near the back of the economy cabin, Elijah whispered anxiously, "Why did she make us leave? Did we do something wrong?" Mia shook her head gently, comforting her brother, though her heart was heavy. She couldn't understand why they had been treated this way when they had done nothing wrong. Settling into their new seats, Mia quietly took out her phone, hands trembling slightly, and typed a message to their father. "Dad, something bad happened. They made us leave first class. The flight attendant didn't believe our tickets were real. We're in economy now." She sent the message, feeling unsure of what would happen next, unaware that their father would soon make sure this incident would change everything, not only for Karen but for the airline itself. Karen returned to her duties in first class, moving gracefully down the aisle, calmly greeting other passengers and carefully avoiding any mention of what had just happened. She acted as though removing the siblings from their seats had been routine, simply a minor issue she had corrected quickly. The nearby passengers quietly accepted this, most returning to their phones or magazines, though a few exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if they should say something or just remain silent. Karen felt confident that she'd handled the situation properly. She had worked many years with this airline and never questioned her judgment about who belonged where. Back in economy, Mia sat quietly next to Elijah, comforting him by showing funny videos on her phone. She wanted to distract him from what had happened, but inside she was deeply hurt and confused. Suddenly her phone vibrated, and she quickly checked the new message. It was from their father. The message read simply, "Tell me exactly what happened." "Who made you move seats?" Mia swallowed hard, sensing the seriousness in his words. She typed quickly, explaining briefly how the flight attendant had refused to believe their tickets were genuine, publicly humiliated them, and made them move. Her father's response was immediate and direct. "Stay calm. I'll handle this right away." Mia put her phone down, relieved but uncertain about what her father meant. She trusted him deeply, knowing he never reacted without reason. Elijah glanced at her curiously, sensing that something important was happening. "Is Dad upset?" he asked softly. Mia nodded gently, reassuring him with a small smile. "Dad's going to sort it out. Don't worry. Just relax and let's enjoy the flight," she said quietly. Elijah seemed comforted by her calmness, leaning back in his seat, trying to shake off the embarrassment he still felt. At the front of the plane, Karen poured herself a cup of coffee, proud that she'd kept the cabin organized and orderly. Another younger flight attendant named Anna, who had watched the incident unfold from a distance, approached Karen cautiously. "Are you sure those kids didn't belong in first class?" Anna asked gently, careful not to sound challenging. Karen rolled her eyes, sipping her coffee dismissively. "Come on, Anna. You've seen enough to know when something looks off. They clearly didn't belong there," Karen replied confidently, unaware that her words were about to come back to haunt her. Suddenly, the plane's internal phone rang sharply from the cockpit. Karen quickly set down her coffee and answered professionally, "This is Karen." The captain's calm but unusually firm voice responded clearly, "Karen, we've just received an urgent call from the airline's management about a serious issue. We need you in the cockpit immediately." Karen felt her heart skip a beat, suddenly uneasy. Without another word, she quickly straightened her uniform and began walking briskly towards the cockpit, unaware that the world she had so carefully controlled was about to crumble completely. Karen stepped into the cockpit, feeling a tightness in her chest she couldn't explain. The captain turned toward her calmly, his face serious and unreadable. Beside him, the first officer avoided eye contact, focusing instead on adjusting controls. Karen's eyes then shifted to a small screen near the captain, displaying a video call connected directly to the airline's main office. On screen, the stern face of an airline executive waited quietly, watching her with cold intensity. Karen cleared her throat nervously, waiting for the captain to explain what was happening. "Karen," the captain began steadily, "we received a direct call from Mr. Reynolds himself, the airline's CEO. He's deeply upset over something that just happened on this flight." Karen felt a sudden jolt of fear at hearing the CEO's name. The airline executive on screen spoke up immediately, his voice firm and sharp. "Miss Karen, why exactly did you remove two young passengers from their first-class seats without proper verification of their tickets?" he asked, his eyes fixed directly on her. Karen hesitated for a moment, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Sir, there was a misunderstanding. Their tickets looked unusual. I was following protocol," she quickly explained, hoping her confident tone masked her nervousness. The executive's expression grew colder. "A misunderstanding? Those two passengers you removed are Mia and Elijah Reynolds, the children of Mr. Reynolds himself, the owner of this airline. They were traveling with legitimate first-class tickets issued personally by their father," he explained slowly, each word hitting Karen harder than the last. Her stomach dropped and her mouth went dry. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. The room felt suddenly very small, and Karen felt exposed, realizing the magnitude of her mistake. The captain glanced at her silently, his eyes carrying a clear message. She'd made an error beyond repair. Karen struggled to find words, her voice shaking slightly. "Sir, I didn't realize. They didn't seem like typical first-class passengers. It wasn't intentional," she said, stumbling over her words, desperate to justify herself somehow. The executive shook his head slowly, clearly unimpressed by her response. "Miss Karen, we judge passengers by their tickets, not by how they look. Mr. Reynolds expects immediate action. You must publicly apologize to his children and escort them back to first class immediately. Further disciplinary action will be discussed once you land," he said firmly, leaving no room for debate. Karen felt dizzy, the weight of embarrassment heavy upon her shoulders. Her entire career flashed before her eyes. She had always prided herself on keeping control and authority on her flights, but now her reputation was unraveling before everyone. Unable to argue, she nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir. I understand," she replied weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. As Karen slowly exited the cockpit, each step felt heavier than the last. Her confidence shattered. She realized everyone on board would soon know the truth. For the first time, she felt completely powerless, knowing she was about to face the consequences of her own assumptions and mistakes. Karen walked slowly toward the back of the plane, her heartbeat loud in her ears, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Passengers glanced curiously as she passed, sensing something unusual had happened. Reaching the economy section, Karen spotted Mia and Elijah quietly seated, trying to distract themselves with their phones. Karen paused, took a deep breath to steady herself, and stepped forward. She gently cleared her throat, causing Mia and Elijah to look up in surprise. "Miss Reynolds, Master Reynolds," Karen began quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "I made a serious mistake. There was no issue with your tickets. I sincerely apologize for my behavior. Please allow me to escort you both back to your original seats in first class." Mia studied Karen's face carefully, noticing how uncomfortable and embarrassed the flight attendant appeared. Elijah glanced up uncertainly at his sister, awaiting her reaction. Mia didn't respond immediately. She held Karen's gaze calmly for a moment before finally speaking, her voice soft but steady. "You were very sure we didn't belong there. Can you please explain why?" Karen felt the heat rising in her cheeks, aware that several passengers around them had stopped pretending to be busy, now openly listening to the conversation. I I made a judgment based on appearance, Karen admitted softly, her voice filled with shame. Mia nodded slowly, quietly acknowledging the honesty in Karen's answer, but not relieving her embarrassment. Without further words, Mia gently stood up, helping Elijah gather their things. They moved quietly into the aisle, waiting for Karen to lead them back to first class. The walk up the aisle seemed endless to Karen. She felt every pair of eyes on her, passengers silently judging the scene unfolding before them. When they reached first class, several passengers looked up in shock and surprise. The whispers began again, louder this time. Mia and Elijah took their original seats calmly, their quiet dignity clear to everyone watching. Karen, standing awkwardly beside them, tried to regain her composure. "If there's anything else you need during the flight, please let me know," she offered hesitantly, her voice weak. Mia looked at her again, her expression gentle but firm. "Thank you," she replied softly, turning her attention toward comforting Elijah, clearly signaling that their conversation was over. Karen quickly turned away, feeling small and humiliated, desperately wanting to disappear from everyone's view. As she returned toward the galley, her mind raced, knowing this moment was far from over. She had no idea just how serious the consequences of her actions would become, but she sensed deeply that everything about her career, and possibly even her life, was about to change dramatically. Back in their first-class seats, Mia gently put an arm around Elijah, sensing how shaken he still was by the earlier embarrassment. She softly reassured him, speaking calmly and quietly, "Everything will be okay now. Dad knows, and he will handle it. Let's just relax and enjoy the rest of the flight." Elijah nodded slowly, settling back into his seat, trying his best to regain the excitement he had felt earlier. Mia looked out the window, but her thoughts remained elsewhere. Although she appeared calm, inside she felt deeply unsettled, still hurt by the unfairness and the humiliation they'd experienced. In the galley, Karen stood nervously, pouring herself another cup of coffee. Her hands were shaking slightly, making the simple task difficult. Anna watched silently from a short distance, seeing clearly how upset and unsettled Karen now was. Hesitantly, Anna stepped closer, her voice gentle and cautious. "Karen, are you okay?" she asked quietly. Karen looked up sharply, her eyes filled with frustration and embarrassment. "Do I look okay to you, Anna?" "I just publicly embarrassed myself because I didn't stop to think properly," Karen snapped, immediately regretting the harsh tone as she saw Anna's startled reaction. Anna, understanding Karen's frustration, took a breath and replied calmly, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you further, but maybe now you'll realize how easily a wrong assumption can hurt people." Karen froze for a moment, Anna's gentle words piercing deeply, forcing her to consider something uncomfortable. Maybe this wasn't the first time she'd made such judgments without realizing the harm she'd caused. She didn't respond, turning away instead, feeling even worse now. The confidence she had carried for years felt shattered, replaced by uncertainty and shame. Karen's thoughts were suddenly interrupted as the intercom system buzzed, and the captain's voice calmly spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing soon. Please make sure your seatbelts are fastened and your tray tables are stowed." Karen quickly straightened her uniform again, trying to regain some professional composure. But her heart was heavy, filled with anxiety about what awaited her once they landed. She knew this incident would likely have severe consequences. She had spent years building a respected career, and now it all seemed to hang by a thread, dependent entirely on the mercy of the airline's CEO, the very man whose children she had humiliated. As the plane began its descent, Mia received another text from her father. The message was clear and reassuring. "I'll be waiting when you land. Everything will be all right. I'm proud of how you've handled this." Mia felt a wave of relief reading his words, comforted by his calm and steady presence, even from afar. She glanced at Elijah, who was looking out the window, seeming calmer now, his earlier embarrassment fading slowly as he focused on the excitement of landing. Mia gently squeezed his hand, silently reassuring him once again that they were safe and protected. Meanwhile, Karen prepared the cabin for landing, her movements stiff and mechanical, her mind entirely elsewhere. She avoided meeting the passengers' eyes, feeling their lingering stares of judgment and curiosity. She felt trapped, her once safe world now uncertain. She had no idea exactly what would happen next, only that her future felt incredibly fragile. As the wheels touched the runway, she silently hoped that somehow she could fix this, although deep inside she feared it was already far too late. As the plane rolled gently towards the gate, a tense quietness settled inside the cabin. Passengers silently gathered their belongings, stealing careful glances toward Mia and Elijah, who remained quietly seated, waiting calmly. Karen, meanwhile, stood stiffly near the exit door, preparing for passengers to disembark. Her heart raced, knowing what likely awaited her once the doors opened. For the first time in years, she felt uncertain, unable to control the anxiety that gripped her. Every whispered conversation around her felt like an accusation, every glance a harsh judgment of her mistake. When the plane finally stopped, the seatbelt sign clicked off, and passengers quickly stood up, eager to leave. But before anyone moved into the aisle, the captain's voice came back clearly over the speakers, his tone unusually firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated for just a moment. We have a brief matter to attend to before you exit the aircraft." Passengers exchanged puzzled looks, sensing something unusual was happening. Suddenly, the plane door opened from outside, and two airline security officers stepped on board, their presence immediately drawing everyone's attention. Karen felt her throat tighten as one of the officers spoke directly to her. "Miss Karen, please come with us. Airline management needs to speak with you immediately regarding your conduct on this flight." The officer's voice was calm but firm, clearly audible to nearby passengers, causing murmurs and gasps throughout the cabin. Karen hesitated for a brief moment, her face flushed with embarrassment and shock, before nodding silently, understanding she had no choice but to comply. As Karen stepped forward, escorted by the two security officers, she passed Mia and Elijah's seats. Unable to resist, she glanced briefly toward them. Mia watched her quietly, showing neither anger nor sympathy, simply observing with calm dignity. Elijah looked down, avoiding her gaze, still feeling the sting of the humiliation she'd caused. Karen's embarrassment deepened as she moved through the cabin, aware that every passenger's eyes followed her closely, witnessing her downfall firsthand. Once Karen exited the plane, the atmosphere in the cabin remained heavy. The captain's voice again filled the quiet space, now softer and reassuring. "Thank you for your patience. You may now safely exit the aircraft." Passengers began moving slowly and quietly, gathering their things, some glancing sympathetically toward the siblings, others whispering quietly about the shocking incident they'd just witnessed. Mia and Elijah waited until the aisle was nearly clear before standing and collecting their belongings. Mia moved carefully, maintaining her composure despite the intensity of what they'd experienced. Elijah held tightly to her hand, his earlier excitement for the flight entirely replaced by anxiety and confusion. Stepping off the plane, they saw their father waiting immediately at the gate, his presence commanding yet comforting. His calm, powerful gaze quickly found them, softening instantly when he saw the distress lingering in their expressions. He approached swiftly, gently pulling both Mia and Elijah into a protective embrace. "Are you both all right?" he asked softly, his voice filled with genuine concern. Mia nodded slowly, feeling immense relief as the security of her father's presence fully surrounded her. "We're fine now, Dad. It was just really hard," she admitted quietly. Her father nodded knowingly, holding them firmly. "I'm so proud of how brave you both were today. Nobody deserves to be treated like that," he said gently. Yet his tone carried a firmness suggesting he was far from done handling this situation. Their father turned slightly, looking directly toward a group of airline executives and security personnel nearby. They stood quietly, clearly awaiting his instruction. "I need this addressed immediately," he said calmly but powerfully, leaving no room for misunderstanding. "This isn't just about my children. This is about how we treat all passengers. I expect full accountability." The airline executives nodded respectfully, assuring him immediate action. Holding Mia and Elijah close, their father guided them gently through the busy terminal, each step filled with purpose and clarity. Although the situation had been painful and unfair, Mia now sensed something important was happening, something larger than her and Elijah. She understood deeply, even in that moment, that their difficult experience would become a powerful catalyst for real change. For now, she just felt grateful that the worst seemed to be behind them, unaware that, for Karen, the real consequences were just beginning. Karen walked through the busy airport terminal, flanked closely by the 2 airline security officers. Every step felt heavier than the last, the bright lights and bustling sounds of the airport suddenly overwhelming. People nearby stopped to watch, sensing immediately that something unusual was happening. Karen kept her eyes fixed downward, desperately avoiding their stares. Each whisper she overheard felt sharper, each glance more judgmental. For years she had walked these same corridors with confidence and authority, proud of the respect her position gave her. But now all that remained was embarrassment and regret. The officers led Karen toward a private area reserved for airline management. They entered a quiet hallway lined with offices, finally reaching a room marked simply, Executive Meeting Room. The door opened, revealing 3 senior airline executives waiting inside, their expressions grave and stern. Karen stepped in slowly, her heart pounding loudly in her ears. She was gently but firmly directed to sit at the end of a long conference table. The executives watched silently as Karen settled into the chair, their eyes filled with disappointment and concern. After a tense moment of silence, one executive, a tall, sharply dressed woman named Rebecca Morris, known for her fairness but also for her strict standards, spoke first, her voice calm yet firm. "Karen, you must understand how serious this situation is. You publicly humiliated 2 young passengers because of assumptions you made based on their appearance. This not only embarrassed those passengers but damaged our airline's reputation and values. Do you realize how deeply troubling that is?" Rebecca asked directly, looking Karen straight in the eyes. Karen took a shaky breath, feeling the weight of Rebecca's words fully. "I understand, Ms. Morris. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I was trying to follow policy. But I realize now that I made a terrible mistake," she replied, her voice unsteady but sincere. Rebecca shook her head slowly, her expression unchanged. "Our policies are clear. If there's ever confusion about passenger seating, the correct procedure is to calmly and privately verify tickets with ground staff. You chose instead to act publicly and harshly, undermining passengers' dignity," Rebecca stated firmly. Another executive, Mr. Jonathan Reed, leaned forward, his face equally serious. "Karen, this incident has forced us to confront difficult questions about how some of our staff treat passengers. We pride ourselves on fairness and respect, yet your actions today contradict those principles. We've already received numerous messages from passengers concerned about how this incident reflects on the airline as a whole," he explained carefully, emphasizing the gravity of the issue. Karen's stomach tightened further, and she felt tears forming in her eyes, though she fought hard to hold them back. She knew her mistake was significant, but hearing how broadly it impacted the airline was painful. "I deeply regret my actions. I know it won't fix what happened, but I sincerely apologize," Karen admitted quietly, her voice breaking slightly. Rebecca sighed deeply, clearly disappointed yet understanding the sincerity in Karen's apology. After a moment of silence, Rebecca finally spoke again, her voice softer but still firm. "Karen, given the severity of this incident, we must take immediate action. Effective immediately, you are suspended from all duties pending a formal review and hearing before the disciplinary committee. During this suspension, you will receive no pay and are prohibited from entering any airline property or facilities. The committee will decide the next steps after thoroughly reviewing today's events," Rebecca stated clearly, leaving no uncertainty about Karen's immediate future. Karen felt her entire world shift sharply beneath her. She had expected consequences, but was still unprepared for the harsh reality of immediate suspension. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to maintain composure. "I understand and accept your decision," Karen replied quietly, her voice almost a whisper. Mr. Reed nodded sympathetically, though clearly in agreement with Rebecca's decision. We encourage you to reflect deeply on your behavior and to fully cooperate with the upcoming review. This is a chance for you to learn and grow from this experience, he added gently, offering a small measure of kindness. Karen nodded slowly, understanding clearly what was expected. The executive stood, signaling the meeting was over. Karen rose unsteadily, her legs weak beneath her. As she left the room quietly, escorted once again by airline security, she felt deeply lost, uncertain of her future. The hallway seemed longer now, colder somehow, filled only with regret and uncertainty. Her thoughts raced, recalling vividly how confident she had felt earlier that morning, never imagining that one poor decision could so swiftly change everything. Outside the terminal, Karen stood alone, the cool breeze of the late afternoon hitting her face, reminding her painfully of her new reality. The airport had always felt like home to her, but now she felt entirely disconnected from it. She knew clearly that nothing about her life or her career would ever be the same again. Her mistake wasn't simply about losing her job or reputation. It was about confronting something deeper within herself, something she had avoided for far too long. For the first time, Karen realized she had much to reflect on, and although deeply painful, it was something she could no longer ignore. Mia and Elijah sat quietly with their father in a private lounge area inside the airport. The space was peaceful, away from the busy crowds outside. Comfortable seats and calming music surrounded them, but Mia still felt uneasy inside. She glanced toward Elijah, who was now quietly eating some snacks their father had brought him, clearly comforted by their father's calm presence. Their father gently placed a comforting hand on Mia's shoulder, sensing the lingering worry she still carried. "Are you feeling better?" he asked softly, looking deeply into his daughter's eyes, searching for any remaining hurt or anxiety. Mia hesitated, then spoke truthfully, her voice gentle but firm. "I'm okay now, Dad, but it still hurts. I don't understand why that flight attendant treated us like we did something wrong. Why didn't she just believe us?" she asked, her voice reflecting honest confusion and sadness. Her father nodded slowly, understanding the depth of his daughter's feelings. He spoke carefully, choosing his words to explain a difficult truth. Sometimes people judge quickly without knowing the facts. It's unfair, it's wrong, and sadly, it happens more often than we realize. Today, she made assumptions about you and Elijah based purely on how you looked, and she made a serious mistake, he explained calmly, watching Mia carefully to see if she understood. Mia listened intently, absorbing every word. Elijah looked up from his snacks, carefully following the conversation. "But why would she do that, Dad?" Elijah asked softly, still confused. Their father sighed deeply, gently leaning forward to explain something difficult to both of them. "Because sometimes people carry biases they don't even know they have. Maybe she had certain expectations about who belongs in first class, and when you didn't match that expectation, she reacted badly. It wasn't about you. It was about something wrong inside her, something she needs to recognize and change," he explained carefully, hoping his words would help them understand without making them feel even more hurt. Mia quietly reflected on her father's words, beginning to grasp something important. "Does this happen to other people too?" she asked carefully, her eyes filled with genuine curiosity and concern. Her father nodded solemnly, meeting her gaze directly. "Yes, Mia. Sadly, it happens a lot. But that's why it's so important we speak out against it. By addressing what happened today, we're not only standing up for ourselves, but for everyone else who experiences similar injustice and doesn't have someone to speak for them," he said firmly, emphasizing the seriousness of the issue. Their father paused thoughtfully, considering his next words carefully. He looked directly at both his children, his voice steady, yet filled with pride. "I want you to know something very important. I'm proud of how brave and composed you both remained today. You faced a difficult situation with dignity and courage, and that matters deeply. Because of what you experienced, We have an opportunity to create meaningful changes at our airline. Changes that will make sure this doesn't happen again. Sometimes difficult experiences help us understand things better and push us to become stronger and better people," he explained gently, hoping his words would comfort them and give them a sense of purpose beyond the hurt they'd felt. Mia took a deep breath, feeling reassured by her father's words. She realized now that what they had experienced wasn't just unfair. It was part of a bigger problem. "Dad, will the flight attendant be okay?" Mia asked softly, surprising even herself by caring about Karen's future despite the hurtful experience. Her father looked at her warmly, understanding her compassion and maturity. "Karen will face consequences because what she did was wrong, and actions must have accountability. But this might also be a chance for her to learn and become a better person, just like it's a chance for the airline to improve." "People can change, Mia, if they're willing to face their mistakes honestly," he said gently, ensuring Mia understood that fairness and compassion could coexist with accountability. Mia nodded slowly, absorbing his words, feeling calmer and stronger with each moment. Elijah smiled gently, clearly comforted and reassured. Their father softly squeezed Mia's shoulder again, proud of how maturely both children were handling this difficult day. "Now, let's get you both home," he said warmly, standing up slowly, encouraging them to do the same. Mia and Elijah gathered their belongings quietly, walking closely beside their father as they left the peaceful lounge area and moved back through the busy airport terminal. As they walked, Mia noticed airline staff quietly watching them from a distance, clearly aware of who they were and what had happened. She saw kindness and sympathy in their eyes, a stark contrast to the embarrassment and judgment she had felt earlier on the plane. It reminded her clearly that not everyone was like Karen. Many people understood fairness and compassion deeply. Mia held her head higher, feeling stronger now, proud that their difficult experience could help lead to something good. Their father guided them gently through the crowd toward the exit, each step reassuring them of their safety and dignity. Mia glanced back one last time at the bustling airport behind her, understanding deeply that today's events had shifted something important, not only in herself, but potentially in others as well. She realized that sometimes the most painful experiences carried hidden opportunities to learn, grow, and make a real difference. Mia felt a quiet sense of pride knowing that what she and Elijah had endured might truly lead to meaningful change, even if it had started from a place of hurt and unfairness. Later that evening, Karen sat alone in her small apartment, the silence around her almost overwhelming. The events of the day replayed endlessly in her mind, each memory more painful than the last. She stared blankly at the uniform lying across her couch, its crisp fabric now a stark reminder of everything she had lost. Her career, reputation, and sense of self-assurance, all of it seemed uncertain now, replaced by confusion and deep regret. She had always taken pride in her position, confident in her ability to handle passengers and situations effectively. But today, all her confidence had unraveled completely, leaving her feeling small and powerless. Unable to ignore her swirling thoughts, Karen reluctantly opened her laptop, only to find dozens of emails and messages waiting for her, some from colleagues, others from airline management. Anxiety tightened in her chest as she opened the most recent message, an official letter from the airline's disciplinary committee clearly outlining the seriousness of the incident and confirming her suspension. She read each line carefully, the reality sinking deeper into her heart. The letter ended with a clear, uncompromising statement. "Your future with the airline will depend heavily upon your cooperation and the outcome of the formal disciplinary hearing scheduled for next week." Karen sighed deeply, setting the laptop aside. She felt utterly lost, unsure what step to take next. Memories from her years working as a flight attendant flooded her mind. She recalled countless moments of kindness and patience, but now she also remembered other moments, times she'd quickly judged passengers without fully considering her actions. Had she always been blind to these biases? Were there other occasions she'd unintentionally hurt or embarrassed someone without even noticing? These uncomfortable questions troubled her deeply, forcing her to look inward and confront difficult truths she'd avoided for far too long. In her solitude, Karen began reflecting honestly on the assumptions she'd made about Mia and Elijah. She thought about how sure she'd felt in that moment, how quickly she'd assumed the siblings didn't belong in first class simply because of their age and appearance. A wave of shame washed over her as she recognized the deeper implications of her behavior. For the first time, she truly saw her actions from Mia and Elijah's perspective, realizing clearly just how humiliating and painful it must have been for them. The awareness hurt deeply, but she also understood it was necessary. She knew she had to confront this fully if she was ever going to grow from this experience. Feeling restless, Karen stood and paced slowly around her apartment, unable to find peace. Eventually, she stopped near a small shelf filled with family photos. Her eyes fell on an old photograph of herself as a young girl, smiling broadly, eyes filled with innocence and optimism. Karen stared at that image for a long time, suddenly struck by how much she had changed since then. Somewhere along the path of her life, she'd lost that open-mindedness and kindness she once valued so deeply. Her sense of pride and authority had replaced empathy and understanding, and now she was paying a heavy price for that mistake. Sitting back down, Karen felt a sudden urge to take responsibility fully and openly for what she'd done. She knew apologies couldn't erase the harm she'd caused Mia and Elijah, but it felt essential for her to sincerely acknowledge her wrongs. With trembling hands, she opened her laptop once again, creating a new email directed to airline management and the Reynolds family. Carefully, choosing each word deliberately, Karen wrote, "Dear Mr. Reynolds, Mia and Elijah, I want to express my deepest and most sincere apology for my actions today. I made assumptions about you based on appearance rather than facts, causing you unnecessary pain and humiliation. My behavior was unacceptable, and I am truly sorry for the harm I caused you both. Today forced me to confront my own biases and mistakes in a way I never have before. I cannot change what happened, but I can promise you that I will learn from this experience, ensuring I never repeat such behavior again. I fully accept any consequences and will cooperate fully with the airline's disciplinary committee. I hope one day you can forgive me, though I fully understand if that's not possible. Regardless, I want you to know how genuinely sorry I am. Sincerely, Karen." Karen paused briefly, reading her email several times before finally pressing send. A sense of relief mixed with uncertainty filled her as the message disappeared into cyberspace. She knew sending an apology didn't magically fix the situation, but it was an important first step toward accountability and change. Karen leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes briefly, feeling emotionally exhausted, but also strangely lighter, as though she'd finally begun facing the difficult journey ahead. Despite the fear of losing her career and her reputation, Karen felt a tiny spark of hope. She realized now that this painful experience was not just a punishment, it was an opportunity to grow, to become more compassionate and aware, and perhaps one day to help others avoid similar mistakes. She knew clearly that real change required deep honesty and self-reflection, even when those things were deeply uncomfortable. For the first time in hours, Karen felt calmer, her heart no longer racing anxiously. She knew the coming days would be incredibly difficult, but she also understood now that she had the strength within herself to face whatever came next. Deep down, Karen recognized the painful but powerful truth that sometimes real growth came only from admitting our mistakes fully, facing our biases honestly, and committing sincerely to becoming better people. Karen stood quietly, moving to a nearby window, looking out thoughtfully at the city lights below. As difficult as the future seemed, she now saw a path ahead, not one defined by mistakes and humiliation, but one shaped by learning, growth, and genuine change. She realized clearly, perhaps for the first time, that the most painful lessons were also often the most valuable. It was a difficult truth, but tonight, it was one Karen finally embraced completely. The next morning, Mia woke up early. the events from the previous day still heavy on her mind. Sunlight filtered gently through her bedroom window, casting warm, golden patterns across the room, but she didn't feel the comfort it usually brought. The hurt she'd felt still lingered, mixing with thoughts about what her father had explained. Quietly, she slipped from her bed and went downstairs to find her father sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee, deep in thought. He glanced up, offering her a gentle smile that carried a quiet strength. "Good morning, sweetheart," he said softly, motioning for her to join him. Mia sat beside him, pulling her chair closer, needing the comfort of his presence. Her father seemed to understand exactly how she felt without needing her to say anything. They sat quietly for a moment, the only sound being the gentle ticking of a clock in the background. Finally, Mia broke the silence, speaking softly but clearly. "Dad, I couldn't sleep much last night. I kept thinking about everything that happened. I'm still confused about why people judge each other so quickly. It's like they don't even see the real person," she confessed gently, her voice reflecting genuine confusion and sadness. Her father placed his coffee down carefully, turning toward her fully, giving her his complete attention. "You're right, Mia. People often judge quickly because they rely on assumptions and stereotypes instead of getting to know someone first. Sometimes those assumptions come from ignorance, sometimes from fear, and sometimes from habits they learned without even realizing it," he explained calmly, making sure she understood clearly. Mia listened intently, her thoughtful expression showing she was carefully processing his words. "But it hurts so much, Dad," Mia admitted, her voice gentle yet firm. "It hurt Elijah, and it hurt me. I thought flying first class was something exciting, something special. But now it just feels sad." Her voice trailed off softly, the honest pain clear in her eyes. Her father nodded gently, reaching over to take her hand in his own, holding it firmly yet tenderly. "I understand completely, Mia. But remember, what happened yesterday wasn't your fault. It didn't happen because you and Elijah did anything wrong. It happened because someone else had a bias they weren't even fully aware of," he explained, emphasizing clearly that Mia shouldn't carry guilt or shame. Mia sat quietly, feeling deeply comforted yet still bothered by a lingering thought. "Do you think Karen is really sorry? Do you think she'll change, Dad?" she asked earnestly, looking directly into his eyes. Her father paused thoughtfully, carefully considering his answer. "I believe people can change, Mia, but they have to genuinely want to. Karen sent us a message last night, a sincere apology. She admitted she was wrong, and she seemed honestly regretful. But real change isn't just words. It takes action, time, and commitment. Only Karen herself can decide if she'll truly learn from this and become a better person," he said firmly, but compassionately, showing Mia clearly that he believed in fairness but also in genuine accountability. Mia considered his words carefully, sensing a deeper wisdom in them. After a moment, she spoke again, her voice gentle yet strong. "I think maybe she can learn, Dad. If we believe people can't ever change, then things will always stay the same. It just feels better to believe in hope even when someone hurt you," she reflected softly, surprising herself slightly with her maturity and compassion. Her father smiled warmly, clearly moved by her thoughtful insight. "You are exactly right, Mia. Believing in hope and giving people a chance is brave and important. It's the only way we can make real change," he said, clearly proud of her understanding and maturity. Just then, Elijah appeared quietly at the kitchen door, rubbing his eyes sleepily. "Morning," he mumbled softly, unaware of the deeper conversation Mia and their father were having. Mia quickly moved to his side, gently guiding him toward the table, offering him comfort. Elijah settled into a chair, still appearing slightly uncertain. Their father smiled reassuringly at Elijah, offering gentle encouragement. "How are you feeling today, Elijah? Did you sleep all right?" he asked carefully, his voice soft and calming. Elijah shrugged slightly, glancing nervously at Mia. "I had some weird dreams about yesterday," he admitted quietly. Their father nodded sympathetically, understanding clearly the lingering effects of the incident. "That's understandable, Elijah. Sometimes difficult experiences stay with us, even after they're over. But you're safe now, and I'm here for you. We'll get through this together," he assured Elijah warmly, providing a clear sense of security and support. Elijah visibly relaxed, comforted deeply by his father's words. After breakfast, Mia noticed her father carefully reading through emails and messages on his phone, his expression serious yet thoughtful. "What happens next, Dad?" she asked curiously, sensing something important was underway. Her father glanced up, meeting her eyes directly, speaking honestly and clearly. "Today, I'm meeting with airline executives. We're discussing how to prevent something like this from ever happening again. There will be new policies and training for all staff about fairness, respect, and recognizing unconscious bias," he explained, emphasizing how seriously the airline was taking the situation. Mia listened carefully, feeling comforted knowing real actions were being taken. Her father continued softly, wanting her to understand clearly the broader significance of their experience. "What happened to you and Elijah shouldn't happen to anyone. Not just because you're my children, but because everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Today, we'll begin making sure our airline lives up to that standard," he said firmly, his voice filled with determination and genuine commitment. Mia felt proud hearing her father's words. Despite the painful experience they'd faced, she now saw clearly that their ordeal had sparked something positive and meaningful. "I'm glad something good can come from this, Dad," she said softly, smiling slightly for the first time since yesterday. Her father smiled warmly in return, nodding gently. "That's exactly right, Mia. Sometimes the most meaningful changes begin with something difficult, even painful. It's never easy, but it's important, and it matters deeply," he replied sincerely, clearly proud of her thoughtful response. Feeling comforted and reassured, Mia stood quietly beside her father, both silently sharing a moment of understanding and hope. Elijah joined them, quietly sensing the importance of the moment. Together, the three stood united, ready to face whatever came next with courage and dignity. Mia felt deeply grateful, knowing clearly she was never alone, no matter how difficult life became. She knew now that true strength wasn't about never being hurt. It was about learning, growing, and standing firm in the face of injustice, determined to create something better for everyone. Later that same morning, Karen stood quietly in front of the airline's headquarters, gazing nervously at the towering building she had entered countless times before. Today, however, felt different. Today carried uncertainty, anxiety, and deep remorse. She knew clearly this wasn't a simple meeting to discuss scheduling or crew assignments. It was a serious disciplinary hearing that could determine the entire future of her career and her life. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, she stepped carefully inside, feeling an immediate heaviness settle over her. The building was familiar yet seemed strangely colder today, less welcoming somehow. Employees passing through the lobby noticed Karen and discreetly glanced in her direction, quickly looking away again. She knew they must have heard about the incident and her suspension. The embarrassment felt overwhelming, but Karen forced herself to remain calm, walking steadily toward the elevators, knowing exactly where she was expected. As the elevator ascended to the executive floor, she tried to mentally prepare herself for what awaited her, repeating silently to herself the commitment she'd made to accept responsibility and face the consequences honestly. Entering the large executive meeting room, Karen saw the disciplinary committee already seated and waiting. At the head of the table sat Rebecca Morris, her expression serious yet professional. Alongside her were Jonathan Reed and two other senior executives Karen recognized well. They greeted her politely but formally, making clear the gravity of the meeting. Karen sat quietly, carefully straightening her posture and meeting their gazes respectfully, determined to remain composed despite the nervousness she felt. Rebecca opened the meeting immediately, her voice clear and direct. "Karen, we're here today to review thoroughly the serious incident involving Mia and Elijah Reynolds on Flight 236. This hearing is your opportunity to explain yourself fully and provide your perspective. We have already reviewed reports from passengers, crew members, and the statement you provided, but we want to hear directly from you. Can you clearly describe your actions and thought process on that flight? Rebecca asked firmly but fairly, emphasizing clearly the importance of honesty. Karen paused briefly, gathering her thoughts carefully before speaking. On that day, I approached Mia and Elijah because I made an incorrect and unfair assumption about their seating arrangement based purely on appearance and my own biases. Rather than calmly and discreetly verifying their tickets as procedure clearly states, I questioned them publicly and harshly. I didn't realize how deeply unfair my actions were until after the damage had already been done. I fully accept responsibility for my mistakes, and I deeply regret the pain and humiliation I caused them both, Karen stated honestly and clearly, maintaining direct eye contact, determined to demonstrate sincere accountability. The executives listened carefully, clearly appreciating Karen's honesty, but also acknowledging the severity of her actions. Jonathan Reed spoke next, his voice calm yet firm. Karen, we appreciate your honesty and your clear recognition of the mistake. However, we must also address that your actions have created significant consequences for the airline's reputation and passenger trust. This was not merely an isolated incident. It highlighted serious issues about bias and fairness within our crew. Do you fully understand the seriousness of these broader implications? He asked directly, carefully assessing Karen's reaction. Karen nodded respectfully, accepting the weight of his words fully. I understand completely, Mr. Reed. My actions have caused deep harm, not only to Mia and Elijah, but also to our airline's integrity and reputation. I see clearly now how critical it is for all crew members, myself especially, to recognize and challenge biases openly. I want you to know I am committed to learning from this experience and taking active steps toward becoming more aware and compassionate, she answered sincerely, her voice filled with genuine conviction. Rebecca paused thoughtfully, clearly considering Karen's response carefully. After a brief silence, she continued firmly, yet fairly. Karen, we have received your apology email to the Reynolds family and your written statement. Both were sincere and reflective. However, our decision today must focus on accountability and setting clear standards for everyone at this airline. Your previous record has been strong, yet this incident remains extremely serious. It deeply contradicts the values we promote and damages the trust we build with our passengers daily, she explained, making clear that sincerity alone would not erase the severity of the issue. Karen listened intently, absorbing each word carefully, understanding fully the seriousness of their deliberations. She felt anxiety rising but stayed focused, determined to remain calm and respectful. Rebecca continued carefully, choosing each word deliberately. Given your honesty, sincere apology, and previous positive record, we believe there is potential for learning and growth. However, serious accountability is necessary. Therefore, our decision is that your suspension will continue for a period of 3 months without pay. During this period, you will complete mandatory sensitivity and anti-bias training programs, as well as community-based service specifically focused on diversity, inclusion, and fairness, Rebecca stated clearly and unequivocally, leaving no room for negotiation. Karen felt relief mixed with humility. She had feared termination, yet she clearly understood the significant consequences she still faced. Jonathan Reed added firmly, Karen, upon completion of your suspension and training, your employment status will be reassessed thoroughly based on your progress and genuine commitment. Understand clearly, this is not guaranteed reinstatement, but rather an opportunity to demonstrate sincere growth and change, he emphasized directly, leaving Karen fully aware that genuine effort was necessary to rebuild trust. Karen nodded respectfully, her voice clear and steady as she replied, I fully accept these conditions, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. I am deeply committed to doing everything necessary to regain trust and prove my genuine commitment to positive change. I won't take this lightly." Rebecca and Jonathan exchanged brief nods of approval, clearly appreciating Karen's acceptance and willingness to change. As the meeting ended, Karen left the room quietly, her heart filled with mixed emotions: relief, humility, and sincere determination. Stepping outside the building again, she felt sunlight warm her face gently, reminding her clearly that today marked a difficult yet necessary beginning rather than an ending. Her career now depended entirely on her own commitment, reflection, and action. It was challenging, even painful, but also clearly important and meaningful. Standing quietly alone for a moment, Karen knew deeply this experience had forever changed her. It forced her to recognize biases she'd ignored, and pushed her toward becoming a more compassionate and thoughtful person. Although uncertain about the future, she felt a quiet strength forming inside her, an inner resilience born from honest reflection and genuine accountability. Karen understood now that real growth always involved discomfort, vulnerability, and sincere effort. Today was just the first step in a long journey ahead, but it was a step Karen was finally ready to take fully, bravely, and honestly. In the weeks following the incident, Mia and Elijah gradually found themselves settling back into their normal lives. School routines, sports practices, and spending time with friends slowly filled their days, helping them regain a comforting sense of normalcy. Yet, even amid these familiar activities, Mia continued to reflect deeply on their experience. She found herself more aware, more sensitive to moments of unfairness around her, moments she previously might not have fully noticed. She quietly watched how people spoke to one another, how judgments were quickly formed based on appearance or assumptions, and it made her thoughtful and sometimes uneasy. One afternoon, Mia sat quietly at her school cafeteria, surrounded by friends chattering cheerfully around her. Normally, she would join in easily, laughing and joking, but today she found herself lost in thought, barely hearing the conversations. Her close friend Sophia noticed Mia's quietness and leaned over gently, speaking softly. "Hey Mia, you've seemed quiet lately. Is everything okay?" Mia looked up, meeting Sophia's concerned eyes. She hesitated briefly, unsure how much to share. Eventually, she decided to open up honestly. "I've just been thinking a lot lately about how people treat each other," Mia admitted softly, glancing around the cafeteria thoughtfully. "It's strange how quickly people judge without really knowing someone." Sophia nodded slowly, listening carefully. "You mean like what happened on your flight?" she asked gently. Mia nodded quietly, grateful that Sophia understood without needing further explanation. "Yeah, exactly. It made me realize how easily people can hurt each other just by assuming things. I never noticed it so clearly before," Mia confessed, her voice reflecting genuine sadness. Sophia placed a comforting hand gently on Mia's shoulder, understanding clearly what Mia meant. "I think a lot of people do it without even realizing," Sophia agreed softly. "But maybe now, because of what happened to you, people will start noticing more." Mia smiled gently, comforted by her friend's support. As they sat quietly, a thoughtful voice nearby suddenly spoke up softly. Mia turned and noticed Ethan, a classmate she knew but wasn't very close to, sitting nearby. Ethan spoke cautiously but sincerely. "I overheard you talking. I'm sorry that happened to you and your brother. It's not fair. I've seen stuff like that happen before, but I didn't really pay attention until now." Ethan's words surprised Mia, but they also deeply moved her. She realized clearly that her experience had already reached people beyond her immediate circle, prompting them to reflect on their own behaviors. Mia turned toward Ethan, speaking honestly yet gently. "Thank you for saying that. It helps knowing people actually care," she said sincerely. Ethan nodded respectfully, clearly appreciating Mia's openness. "I think it's important people talk about these things. It shouldn't be normal to judge or mistreat anyone based on how they look or where they sit on an airplane," he said firmly. Mia noticed other classmates nearby quietly listening now, thoughtfully absorbing their conversation. It felt powerful to Mia. knowing that simply sharing her experience had opened a meaningful dialogue among her peers. Later that evening at home, Mia quietly shared with her father the conversation she'd had with Sophia and Ethan. He listened carefully, clearly impressed by the maturity Mia showed. "I'm proud of you, Mia," he said warmly, placing an encouraging hand gently on her shoulder. "You're helping others understand something very important. Change happens one person at a time, through honest conversations just like the one you had today." Mia smiled softly, feeling deeply reassured by her father's words. Meanwhile, Karen began her journey toward rebuilding herself, fully committing to the disciplinary committee's conditions. She enrolled immediately in the mandatory sensitivity and anti-bias training programs, attending classes weekly. Initially, these sessions were challenging for her, forcing her to face difficult truths about herself that she'd never considered before. At first, Karen felt defensive, uncomfortable listening to stories about discrimination, bias, and unfair treatment. However, over time, she gradually opened up, learning to listen carefully to the experiences of others without judgment or defensiveness. One particular evening during a community-based workshop she attended, Karen sat in a circle alongside others, quietly listening as participants shared deeply personal experiences about discrimination they faced in daily life. Hearing first-hand accounts of pain caused by biases similar to her own mistakes deeply affected her. She saw clearly now how her own assumptions had mirrored these painful stories, hurting people in ways she'd never fully realized. When it was finally Karen's turn to speak, she hesitated briefly, feeling vulnerable yet determined. Speaking softly, Karen carefully began sharing her story honestly with the group. "I made a terrible mistake a few weeks ago," she admitted quietly, her voice slightly trembling. "I wrongly assumed 2 young passengers didn't belong in first class, simply because of their appearance. I embarrassed and hurt them publicly because of my own biases. At first I struggled to fully understand how deeply harmful my actions were. But attending these sessions has opened my eyes completely. I now understand clearly how much pain my assumptions caused, and I'm committed to never repeating that mistake." Karen confessed openly, her voice filled with genuine humility. The group listened quietly, clearly recognizing Karen's sincere effort and vulnerability. After a thoughtful silence, an older woman named Grace spoke gently, her voice kind and understanding. "Karen, it takes courage to admit mistakes honestly and publicly. Change is never easy, but it's always possible. What matters now is what you do going forward, how you grow, and how you help others grow. You're not alone in this journey," Grace assured warmly, providing Karen deep comfort and encouragement. Karen felt genuine gratitude hearing Grace's supportive words. She knew clearly this journey of self-awareness and change would remain difficult, but Grace's kindness provided her strength and hope. Karen realized clearly for the first time that true accountability wasn't just punishment or remorse. It meant actively working toward becoming someone better, someone deeply aware and genuinely compassionate. Over the following weeks, Karen became deeply involved in community initiatives, volunteering at programs promoting inclusion, equality, and diversity. She worked carefully and thoughtfully, actively applying what she learned from her mistakes and her training. Gradually, people in these communities began accepting and respecting Karen, recognizing clearly her genuine commitment to positive change. Though still uncertain about her future at the airline, Karen now felt a sense of meaningful purpose, determined that regardless of the outcome, she would continue this important work. Meanwhile, Mia continued speaking openly and honestly with friends and classmates about fairness, dignity, and the importance of challenging assumptions. Each conversation she had felt meaningful, making her realize clearly the powerful impact one experience could have. Though their paths were separate, both Mia and Karen had unknowingly become connected through this difficult yet transformative experience, each growing profoundly and genuinely in their own way. Both had learned clearly that true growth and meaningful change could indeed come from moments of pain and difficulty, as long as they were willing to face those moments honestly and openly. Several months passed, and the airline implemented sweeping changes designed to prevent incidents like Mia and Elijah's from ever happening again. Mandatory training sessions on diversity, unconscious bias, and respectful communication became standard for all employees. From pilots and flight attendants to ground staff and managers, the airline's senior executives personally addressed these issues in open forums, making it clear that accountability and genuine respect were non-negotiable values. Passengers noticed and appreciated these efforts, and gradually trust in the airline's integrity began to rebuild. Karen completed all the required programs with dedication and humility, receiving positive reports from instructors and community leaders. During her suspension, she volunteered consistently, making sincere efforts to help others avoid the mistakes she herself had made. Through her volunteer work, Karen felt herself genuinely changing, becoming more thoughtful, compassionate, and deeply aware of the importance of kindness and fairness. She often reflected on Mia and Elijah, silently thanking them for teaching her a lesson she desperately needed to learn. Finally, the day came when Karen was summoned back to the airline headquarters to meet once again with the disciplinary committee. As she entered the same executive meeting room, she felt both nervous and hopeful. Rebecca Morris and Jonathan Reed greeted her warmly but professionally, clearly noticing the growth and genuine humility she now carried. After carefully reviewing her progress reports and listening closely to her reflections on her journey, the committee agreed Karen had demonstrated sincere growth and genuine remorse. They offered her reinstatement under clear probationary conditions, emphasizing continued self-awareness and commitment to the values she had learned. Karen gratefully accepted their decision, promising clearly and sincerely that she'd continue learning, growing, and advocating for genuine respect and fairness. Returning to work, she felt deeply humbled, yet profoundly grateful for the chance she'd been given. Her colleagues, initially cautious, gradually noticed her sincere efforts to apply what she'd learned, treating passengers and coworkers with newfound compassion and genuine care. Over time, Karen quietly earned back their respect, clearly demonstrating through actions, not words, the meaningful changes she'd made. Almost a year after the difficult incident, Mia and Elijah once again prepared to travel, this time alongside their father, heading on a special family vacation. Arriving at the airport, they approached the airline counter where staff warmly greeted them, clearly aware of who they were and what they'd experienced. Mia noticed immediately how genuine and respectful each employee's interactions felt, far different from what they'd encountered previously. As they boarded the plane, the flight attendants smiled warmly, treating every passenger equally, demonstrating clearly the airline's commitment to its improved values. Settling into their seats, Mia and Elijah shared a quiet look, understanding clearly the powerful significance of this moment. Their father watched them thoughtfully, proud of their strength and maturity. Mia noticed a familiar figure quietly approaching down the aisle. Karen, now carefully back at work, noticeably changed. Mia felt her heart tighten slightly, unsure how to react. Karen paused respectfully by their seats, clearly unsure but determined to speak. Her voice was soft and sincere as she spoke carefully. "I want you both to know again how deeply sorry I am for what I did to you. I've learned so much from that day, and it's made me someone better. I can't change what happened, but I promise I've changed myself," Karen said honestly, vulnerability clear in her expression. Mia looked thoughtfully into Karen's eyes, sensing the genuine sincerity in her words. Elijah watched silently, clearly trusting his sister's reaction. After a brief pause, Mia gently nodded, offering Karen a soft smile. "Thank you for saying that. I believe you," Mia responded softly, her voice filled with genuine kindness and maturity. Karen visibly relaxed, clearly moved by Mia's gentle acceptance. She nodded respectfully, quietly moving on to perform her duties, deeply grateful for Mia's compassion. Their father gently placed an arm around Mia and Elijah, clearly proud of their maturity, compassion, and grace. Mia quietly leaned into his comforting embrace, feeling deeply reassured. As the plane took off, ascending smoothly into a clear blue sky, she gazed out the window, reflecting silently on everything they'd experienced and learned. She saw clearly now how even painful experiences could lead to meaningful growth, deep understanding, and genuine change. For Mia, the events of that difficult day had become a powerful reminder of the importance of speaking out, remaining compassionate, and choosing hope, even amid pain. For Elijah, it taught resilience and empathy, shaping his understanding of fairness deeply. And for Karen, it had transformed her into someone committed fully to kindness and understanding, determined to advocate continually for fairness and dignity for everyone. Their shared journey, once filled with hurt and humiliation, had quietly become a meaningful catalyst for genuine change, not only within themselves, but throughout the airline and their community. And although none of them would ever forget the pain they'd felt, they each understood clearly now that true strength and real growth often came from those difficult moments, moments that taught them clearly and profoundly about the importance of dignity, compassion, and sincere respect. As Mia rested comfortably against her seat, watching clouds drift gently past, she felt genuinely hopeful and proud. Proud of how she and Elijah had handled their painful experience. Proud of how their father had stood strongly by their side. Proud even of Karen's sincere efforts toward change. She saw clearly that life wasn't simply about avoiding pain or difficulty. It was about responding thoughtfully, compassionately, and courageously when those moments inevitably came. The airplane moved steadily onward, carrying them toward new adventures, experiences, and lessons yet to be learned. Mia knew clearly and deeply now that wherever their lives took them, she and Elijah would remain strong, compassionate, and deeply committed to treating everyone they met with dignity and respect, carrying forward the powerful lessons they'd learned from that unforgettable journey. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories like this.